Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SuperCoach, mates. Well, round 8 is done and dusted. Round 7 is done and dusted. My Magpies are still on top of the ladder, flying 6-1. As for Thomas, unfortunately, I think it's going to be a long winter for Thomas and his Saints. But as per normal, I am joined by Thomas. How are you going other than watching St Kilda be absolutely rubbish?
Not too bad. Yeah, definitely frustrating. That St Kilda's basically decided to shit the bed over the last month, but hopefully, trying to get some form in and hopefully we can kind of bounce back to some sort of semblance of football club at the moment. Otherwise, as you said, it could be a long season, staring down a bottom four kind of finish, which, I mean, a lot of people was predicting to start with. But on the flip side of things, I think SuperCoach ended up inside the top 1K, which is nice. So ranked about 680th mark at the moment. I don't know how long that's going to last for with how my team's kind of holding together by a piece of string with regards to cash gen and whatnot. But we'll get into that as the episode progresses. But I'm sure you're happy with how the Maggies are going, Nathan. No dramas there, top of the table. Can't complain in any sense. But to kick things off, you do have a few complaints, I can tell, from the offset with a certain pretty close to grand finalists in previous seasons, and a certain player that you decided to trade out, and it's kind of burnt in the last 2 weeks, unfortunately. But take it away with your Nags.
Yeah, well, I'm going to nag myself here for trading out Joel Frazier. Now, the only saving grace is that I did trade out Joel Frazier for Nick Dacos, who has outscored him the last 2 weeks. But I guess for everyone, this is a lesson that every year we always say, don't trade out players that are mid-prices before you get rookies off the field. Because if you've traded out Joel Frazier and you haven't got in Nick Dacos or, someone like I did, it would have been pretty frustrating watching Joel Frazier score 120 last week and then 114 again on the weekend. His break even now, I believe, is back in the 30s, which is, not great for those people who got rid of him. I'm just going to quickly get him up now and have a look. Sorry, I probably should have already had this up now. Frazier, his break even's -5.
Yeah.
So he's projected to score 68, and even with that projected score, he's projected to go up $32,000, which will basically put him at about $420,000. Now, I just feel for those people who have traded him out and downgraded him to a rookie, because I don't think any rookie has outscored Joel Frazier in the last 2 weeks. So, to those of you that have, I feel sorry for you, but hopefully this is a lesson learned that you've got to try and get rookies off the field before you worry about trading out players like Joel Frazier. And then my team nag for the week is the GWS Giants. Now, I, like a lot of people, probably had the Giants as my flag favourites going into the season. But the way they are playing right now is not sustainable. So, for those of you who are a bit more statistically minded out there, they gave up 55 clearances on Saturday night to the Bulldogs. Now, I think that was the Bulldogs' 4th best return in 25 years that Champion Data have been recording that clearance stat. It's their 4th best return, and you just cannot compete with that. This year, they ranked 15th for 14th this year for inside 50 differential, and I believe like the last 10 premiers have all been top 6 in this inside 50 differential stats. So they are holding up tremendously well, given the fact that they are having so much supply go inside their defensive 50. So this year they've taken the most intercepts of any side, which is a massive tick, but it's more so where they're intercepting the ball that's the problem. So most sides try and sort of intercept the ball in that sort of half back to midfield area. But because the Giants are conceding so many inside 50s, they've conceded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're 12th for inside 50s against. Which doesn't sound like actually. Sorry, no, I take that back. Sorry, they are 15th for inside 50s against. So that means that they've had the 4th most inside 50s in their back half. So the fact that they're winning so much intercepts is brilliant, but it's not sustainable. Well, I don't think it's sustainable anyway to be doing that. And it showed on the weekend with the Bulldogs, who basically just wore down that Giants defense, and then they just leaked like crazy. So I don't know where to hear from the Giants, because I don't know if their midfield is good enough to fix this clearance problem. Because this year they are below AFL average for clearances won, I believe. Yeah, they're 15th again for clearances won. So they cannot get the ball forward at all because they can't win it in the midfield. And then they're trying to transition the ball from their back half against some of the best transition teams. So the teams this year that they've lost to. So the Bulldogs are 3rd at defending like ball movement from one end of the ground to the other. The other team they lost to, Hawthorn, is the 2nd best team at defending ball movement. And then this week they're playing Sydney, who are the number 1 team at defending ball movement from one end of the ground to the other. So I perhaps might favour Sydney as an outsider, just given the fact that the Giants are not a great clearance team, and the fact that Sydney are number 1 at defending ball movement, that if Sydney can win the stoppage battle and win the clearance, the fact that they are the best team at defending ground-to-ground, end-to-end ball movement tells me that I think Sydney are absolutely a chance of winning this game despite their form. So to the Giants, and in particular the Giants midfielders, we need a lift from you. Otherwise, our preseason flag fancies are going to end up being bottom 10 fancies. And that's just not good enough for a list of this quality. So to the Giants midfield, you need to lift. Otherwise, we're going to be talking about this for the rest of the year, about how the Giants midfield just cannot win anything and put their defense under so much pressure, which, is not good enough for a list of this quality. So the Giants midfield, lift.
Yeah, that's gone bang. Yeah, I think Fraser's
not happy.
Fraser's definitely a frustrating one. I mean, I traded him out, I think, the week before he started his ton or consecutive tons. I think I traded him out. Let me double check.
The only consolation I'll give myself is I started with him. So I didn't actually trade him in and then trade him back out again. I actually started with him. So I know some people like you, Thomas, actually traded him in and then traded him out, which would be horrible. But at least I started with him. But yes, it is frustrating to see him just go, 125 odd and then another 110 on the weekend. But I'm not as annoyed with that as I am with the Giants.
Yeah, like I traded him out when basically I think he scored consecutive 40s or whatever it was. I think it was pretty poor. Let me just bring it up.
I think it was a 50 and then a 40 or something like that. Yeah,
it was 50 49 and then 50. So I traded him out at that 49 when he dropped. So I guess it, to and from, it got me Whitfield, whatever. It was frustrating, but it's one that it'd be interesting to see whether the return of Bontempelli has helped him. I thought it kind of worked the opposite. Fact that you've got another midfielder in there that kind of impacts how his midfield role looks like. But to be honest, I mean, his new role, playing kind of that wing role, pushing into in and around the ball, has probably helped him a little bit, because he definitely looked lost in the midfield without Bontempelli. When he was playing kind of that 3rd to 4th midfielder, he just looked pretty lethargic and lost out there, which probably impacted his scoring a little bit. So, it's nice to see him bounce back, and hopefully if you, for whatever reason, have still got him or whatever, good on you for holding that long and sticking with the face, and hopefully he can continue to pump out some decent scores. But moving swiftly onwards to my play of the week, for my SuperCoach team. Obviously, I think I scored. Let me just bring up my score. I did score the
And
20.
mine as well.
Yeah,
Mine as well.
26.
I've got him too.
Oh, do you? Brayshaw?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
started him, so he's my player of the round as
yeah.
well.
I think
So
we
I'll
both.
just go off what you're saying because I'll
Yeah,
probably say the same thing.
yeah. We both agree there. Yeah, I scored the 26, which put me in season high rank of 680. So hopefully that's sustainable. Who knows? With how kind of my cash gen is stalling a little bit. But yeah, Brayshaw is definitely the player of the round for me, and as Nathan said, he's as well. 37 disposals, 5 tackles, 157 super coach points. I initially thought, shit. He scored back to back early hundreds to start the season. I think he went like 106 and 105, whatever. But since then, he's just completely elevated his scoring to next level. Yeah, so 101 to start round 1 and then 106 in round 2. And I thought, maybe it's one of those picks that is going to take a while. And then he just went bang after that. Hasn't dropped below 120 at all. Faces St Kilda. On Friday night could potentially be in our top vice captain and captaincy options for the round because I think he's just one of those players that, as Nath has talked about for the last, fortnight or whatever, how important it is to nullify the likes of Sarong and his influence in that Fremantle side. I think the question's got to be asked whether it's worth starting to tag Brayshaw or is he even, how does he handle a tag because of his ability to gut run most games quite well, and he's got a huge amount of stamina. So I think that's what has held him in good stead from the games I've watched from Freo. I watched that Freo Adelaide game on Anzac Friday, on Anzac Day, sorry, and he just tore Adelaide apart with his running capacity and just his ability to get the ball and go and then keep moving forward, to really push Freo forward. And I think that spells danger for Friday night. But yeah, he's player of the man for me, and he's almost been an automatic vice captaincy option for the last month of footy, which has been nice. But I guess to the talking points for this week for our SuperCoach teams, it's an interesting one because I'm probably in a boat where I'm a little bit stagnated in trades. There's not an obvious rookie or premium that we can kind of decipher, but two names that stick out out in our minds at the moment is Bontempelli and Butters, and the conversation around these two, and we'll keep this one pretty brief because we'll move on to our kind of trade discussions in the next couple slides. But with our top premiums, Nath, what are your thoughts on obviously Bontempelli priced at 681, which is his starting price, and then Butters at 691k, so he's had that initial price rise of about 30k. Bont's sample size has been against St Kilda and a win against the Giants. 159 he went against St Kilda. I think he turned up by half time in that bloodbath. And then 128, an impressive outing against the Giants where he was attempted to be tagged by Bedford, but he kind of broke away pretty easily. And then Butters on the flip side of that, 164, 164, 130, 162, 164, 135 in his last 3. What are your thoughts on these two? Is it too expensive to pay up for these players? For me personally, I started Lockie Neal at 645k. I didn't start Whitfield. I bought Whitfield in when he was just above 600. There's always this thing in SuperCoach where, you save up all your money, or you try and make ability to get these top premiums in, and you finally got enough money because the rookies are fattening and whatnot. And all of a sudden you bring in that top premium and they don't perform as well as you want to, and they start dropping in price and you go, well, shit, I could have got it for a lot cheaper. What are your thoughts on these two in particular? Is it kind of just get them in now, or is it wait until they might have a poor game and then get him in a little bit later? Because at this point, I'm looking at my side now and I'm like, how am I going to get these players in because they're just so expensive?
Yeah, I tend to be more of the wait and see if they fall type of guys. Just because 681, I don't think I'd be getting Butters in if he's more than Bontempelli. So I'm going to rule Butters out now. I don't think you should get Zach Butters in. I know he's scoring ridiculous. But I'm just mainly looking at Bontempelli. I have no doubt that he's going to have a down game at some stage. And you're probably going to be able to get him in. It's just a question of when. I've got my eye on a different player. I'm trying to pull a couple of maneuvers to get him in. Who's about 100k cheaper than them, which we might talk about later on. Who I think could go gangbusters this week. Given that the opposition that he's playing generally don't tag. So I think for these two, I think you probably are going to want both of them at some stage, but it's just really difficult because they didn't play round one. But not a lot of people have them unless they did the auto pick at the start of the year and basically haven't touched their side. Because I think most of the auto picks would have probably had Bont and Butters in there. I know when I did my very first side, I had Bont, Dacos, and Butters, and I didn't start any of them. So I think that's the caliber of player we're speaking about here, that you are going to want them in at some stage, but it's just a question of timing. And given the fact that there's, as you touched on, Thomas, there's not a great deal of rookies. I don't think getting them in now is particularly wise decision. If you are going to go for one, though, I would go for Bontempelli purely because I think their scoring difference isn't going to be much, and you're saving 10k by getting in Bontempelli. So if you have to get one of them in, I would go Bontempelli right now. But I think this is basically just going to be a matter of watching these two and just picking the one that's cheaper at the time and just getting them in if you want both of them. Because, yeah, I think you're going to want both of them. But right now, I think both of them are just a little bit out of budget for my liking at the minute. But I'm hoping to get both of them in at some stage.
Yeah, nah. I think I just cut out. My internet cut out. It's been a bit dodgy over this last week. But yeah, I do agree with that sentiment there that it's pretty expensive for what you're paying for both of them. Butters, I'd be a little bit scared to pay that much money for him. I know I've owned him before. He's had a history of starting ridiculously hot and then cooling his jets a bit when kind of teams cotton on to Butters a little bit. I think the benefit with Butters at the moment is the likes of Horn Francis and Rosie aren't playing in the same midfield at the moment. Rosie's playing off half back. I believe he got tagged in their most recent matchup. Against North. I think Darcy Tucker tagged him a little bit off half back, which kind of nullified Rosie's influence to some degree. But if you obviously tag Rosie at half back, then you expose yourself in the midfield, and that's where Butters and Horn Francis got let loose a little bit. Butters has obviously that ability to just rack up disposal like no tomorrow if he gets the chance to. But the difference between these two, I think, at the end of the day is Bont's on his bubble at the moment. I think his break-even's about 113, 114. So, it's one of those ones that, if you get him in, you're basically guaranteed a top liner regardless of how you think of it. I think he got managed and got subbed in that matchup against the Giants because they were winning so comfortably. And he still got scaled to about 120, scaled to that 128 score. So he's going to score no problems. He's, champion data's love child, and we all know that. But it's one of those situations where I think if you had the ability to bring in Bont this week, I wouldn't be hugely against it. But I think I'd be more inclined to potentially once they drop even a little bit. Port could well do a job on Bont. They got Willem Drury, they got Ollie Wines in there that can really put some defensive pressure. I think against the Giants, they really didn't. Giants really didn't have anyone big body enough to really put some pressure on them. I don't think Tom Green didn't do a tagging role. It was Bedford in there that's known for his tagging ability. They got Kelly, they've got whatever in there, but Callahan, but they're not known for their tagging ability. So I think it was Bedford that was, a little bit too big a job for him to really quell Bont's influence. So you're getting in a top line regardless. And I think if you can do it this week, this is probably the week to do it until you're going to have to wait for a drop in price, because I don't think, it's one of those things where you don't want to pay a stupid amount of money. But on the flip side, it's like, how long do you want to wait for these players to start dropping a significant amount of cash? Because we know they're not going to drop a stupid amount of cash unless they've, consecutive poor games like your Lockie Neals early this season. But I think if I had to pick one this week to bring in, it'd probably be Bont. Just because he's on his bubble, he's going to shift after this week, whereas Butters has had that price rise, and he's a lot closer to 700k, which is a ton of money to bring in arguably 3 tough matchups with the Dogs, Crows, and Cats, who can all put enough defensive pressure in the midfield to kind of nullify Butters to some extent, where he's not pumping out these 160s. But yeah, it's one that if you have the money, you definitely have that conversation about whether, it's worth getting Bont or Butters. And I think Bont's probably the way to go if you have that money in the bank. But moving on to our top trade out, or not top trade out targets. This is not necessarily, make this clear, this is not necessarily a top 3 out of anything. It's more, some top options that we can discuss about our trade out options. They're not necessarily in any order. This is kind of the more popular options that people are trading at the moment, and we can have a discussion about it. So first one off the bat there, Levi Ashcroft. This name will probably pop up again in the upcoming weeks. His break evens at 48, which is manageable. 347.8k there, pretty much made his money. His scoring has done super well. He's pretty average against St Kilda, but still scored that 66. Then he had that 89 and 90 in the last fortnight. What are your thoughts on Levi Ashcroft? Say you can get Dacos this week because he traded Ashcroft and, say a Sam Davidson or whatever, and you bank that money and, the rookies are fattening, so you're able to get that top line premium. Do you reckon it's the good move to make, Nath, to trade him straight up to a premium, or do you reckon it's one of those things where you're sacrificing a good on-field rookie spot? Because we know that Ashcroft, if he plays as he has for the whole season so far, do you reckon he's too safe an on-field rookie score to be getting rid of at this point where his break-even still manageable, or do you think it's ready to go, or his time is ready to go if you can get a top-line premium?
Well, you should already have Dacos, because you should have listened to us last week and got him in then. Which we did flag that because his break even was about 50 odd, and he got that by half time, quarter time, just about, I think. So, you should already have Nick Dacos. I think he's still got money to make. But obviously the lure there of a premium midfielder, especially if you've got like Oliver and Callaghan and, those guys who perhaps aren't doing as well like I do, or a bit up and down. There is definitely that allure there, but I think out of all of the rookies that I've got, I think Levi is definitely scoring the most consistent. So I think for mine, if Levi Ashcroft is your last rookie on the field, I would probably be inclined to trade him and get him up to a full premium, like a premium player if you can. Yeah. But if you're still like me, and I would say a lot of other coaches, and you've still got other rookies on the field, I think you can probably afford to keep him, just because he is still generating money, and he's actually not going that badly. So yeah, I think for me, I'll be keeping Levi. But if he's your last rookie and there's a premium you're being eyeing off, I'll just make that trade now. Because I don't think you're going to get a better cash generator this year than Levi Ashcroft. Perhaps Sam Davidson, who we're going to talk about in a sec. He's the only other one who I would have in this category. But yeah, I think if you've still got other rookies, keep. Otherwise, move him on for a premium.
Yeah. Look, I'd probably say there's a fair few people that have multiple rookies. Then not, I'd be pretty surprised if Ashcroft's your last rookie to move on. I think by the stage that Ashcroft is your last rookie to move on, you obviously definitely move him on, and there's no questions asked about it. I guess it's one of those things where you kick yourself a little bit if he does rebound in his scoring and, go back to 90 scores and whatnot. He's got that Q Clash coming up, which is a pretty enticing fixture to watch as a neutral. So, but probably a tough on-field scoring possibility for him against a pretty, juiced up Suns outfit. So it's one of those ones where I think, he's made his money to some degree. He probably can make a little bit more. If you can get you a top liner, I don't see why it'd be a huge deficiency to get rid of him. But having said that, I think on the flip side, you're risking a little bit because you get rid of a good on-field rookie. If that leaves you very exposed, then, Is it worth it? I'm not sure, but I guess if you can go straight up to, you know, using a 1 up, 1 down kind of scenario where you've got some money banked a little bit and you can get him up straight to like a Bontempelli, I wouldn't be too against that, and that definitely boosts your scoring up a little bit because we know that the likes of Bontempelli and Butters are capable of scoring quite nicely. But moving on to the next player on the list there, Adam Chera. He's one that is a little bit interesting because I know a few players have got him, including myself, and he's priced at that 500k mark there with a break even of 111. What are your thoughts with Chera in particular? His previous 3 scores are pretty impressive. You know, he's got those 2 tons there, 110, 117. His 81 was affected by a groin issue where he really struggled to get back on to full capacity late in that game against the Cats. And he's now, I don't know if Carlton have, what do you call it, contested that 1 match ban. But what are your thoughts on Chera there?
They have.
Yeah, have they? So, you know, if he gets off, it's a different scenario. But regardless of that, what are your thoughts on Chera? Look, we all brought him in as a mid-pricer, but if he can get you up to a Bontempelli or a Butters or whatever, would it be worthwhile? Or do you reckon, especially if he does get off in the tribunal, do you reckon just hold on to Chera for a little bit longer?
No, I think you've got to hold Chera. Same as the discussion last week with Frazier and yeah, if you've got rookies on the field, you have to get them off before Chera. So yeah, I'd be holding Chera, even if he's suspended. Hopefully you've got good bench cover and you can just play him for a week.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. I think you know, we don't want to make that mistake again with Joel Frazier, but he's one of those players where he's playing not too badly. He's going to score pretty well. Look, there's probably time on ground percentage issues with Walsh, Hewitt, Cripps all in there as well. But he's one that, especially if he does get off and he's free to play and he's, you know, named and whatever, I think you just hold him on and keep going. Yeah, he's one that I don't think is a huge concern. Maybe Oliver's a bit more of a concern with his lack of getting those 120s and 110s that we all hoped in a rejuvenated Melbourne side. But Chera is one that I think you can hold on for a little bit longer as well, or hold on as long as you can and fix up elsewhere. Because I think that's the thing, as we said about Frazier, it's pretty important to kind of make sure your rookies are all right and your teams are pretty set with the rookies off the field before you start looking at mid-prices and whatnot, as long as they're not bleeding too much or they're not scoring so poor that it's impacting your overall side. But the last one on there before we move on is Sam Davidson, priced at 310k. I got rid of him last week to get in Matt Flynn. Oh, sorry, this round to get in Matt Flynn. With a break even of 50, we all know that he's capable of getting that spike score. He did that against St Kilda, but, you know, you look at that in a little bit more of a closer lens and every St Kilda player was scoring pretty easily. But, every Dogs player was scoring pretty easily. But what are your thoughts on Sam Davidson? Is he one that, again, if you need the cash to downgrade, do you get rid or do you hold on a little bit longer as well with Davidson? We know he's capable of getting that break even sort of, but now it's creeping up again a little bit where if he scores a 60, maybe he pushes a little bit more, or do you reckon he's got another spike score in him?
Well, his break even's 50, so I feel like he's in the same boat for mine as Levi Ashcroft, where if you've got other rookies on the field, I think he's probably not the highest priority to get rid of yet because of his role. He looks brilliant out on that wing at the Western Bulldogs. It's hard to miss his blonde mop of hair running out on that outer wing.
Yeah.
But yeah, if he's the difference between you and a premium and he's your last rookie, go ahead and move him on. But otherwise, I would probably refer back to what I said about Levi Ashcroft, which is if you've got other rookies, just hold him. And yeah, just probably you can probably get another. I think he's probably got to go before Ashcroft. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, I'd be holding him for now because I think most people would have other rookies on the field.
Yeah, I mean the main reason I got rid of him was because, you know, I was able to get Matt Flynn out of it, and that was a little bit of a forced trade. I had Max Hall in that line to get rid of, but unfortunately, I didn't have the money to actually facilitate. Well, not unfortunate for me because Max Hall went and scored 82, but because I needed that extra 50 odd K, and that enabled me to get Flynn on board who turned up, which was nice. I guess it's a team dependent thing, but it's one of those things where there's probably other rookies there that are in a little bit more trouble with break evens and whatnot. But Davidson's one that I think, you could potentially get rid of this week and not be too fussed about these rookies. Davidson and Ashcroft in particular, you look at how much money they've made. They've made their, that 150K mark that everyone talks about being kind of a successful trade out option. So it's whether you want to keep holding them and keep making a little bit more money, or you're happy to get rid. That's really team dependent, I think, at the end of the day. Like, we looked at Davidson beforehand and, people thought, all right, sweet, he scored 82 against St Kilda. He's going to make a bit more money, and he's sprays out a 51 there and was probably lucky to get that score and doesn't go overall up too much more in cash. So it's one of those ones where it's really up to you and how you want to decide which way you want to sway. And, I think either or is okay. I just think that you want to make the most of making sure you get someone that you really are keen to get on if you want to trade out these juiced up rookies. Because if you say, you trade up to a mid-pricer, then all of a sudden it becomes a bit of a dead trade, especially if that mid-pricer doesn't really fire up. But the honourable mentions there, Clay Hall, the West Coast player that I brought in for his 2 games and 1 game really, and then just didn't play again, that West Coast guide. He's priced about 187K. Whether or not he'll get another game's yet to be seen. I'm not too sure he will at this stage, but who knows if they bring in another midfielder. But he's one that I guess if you really want some extra money, you could potentially trade him out just because he looks to be a bit of a dead rookie or a rookie that's a bit of an uncertainty in his best 22. And the other one's Murphy Reid. I don't know if you've got him in your side, Nath.
No.
Rio Dockers player. He's one that I don't think a lot of people started because he had that uncertainty with his, his position in the side and whatever. But it's one of those ones where he's priced at about 300K, and then if you get rid of him, you've made your money with them. So it's one of those ones that I guess you'd be pretty happy with overall if you can get rid of Murphy. I'd say probably Murphy Reid overall is probably the one ahead of Davidson and Ashcroft in that sense. But moving on to, do you have to leave, Nathan, now? Is that what you said? Or
Nah, I got 5 more minutes. So I
yeah.
got to run off to tennis. I play tennis on Tuesday nights.
That's all right. No, I'll finish it off. What we'll do is we'll leave your stats that matter for next week, and we'll kind of
no,
that.
never mind. It's been cancelled. I can stay.
Here we go. Live breaking news. Is that because of the rain?
Yep.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's reset it back a bit. So yeah, as I said, Clay Hall, Murphy Reid, they're 2 that I would potentially. Clay Hall, I'd say, look, you could potentially hold him on and hope he gets a game. I'm really hoping he does get a few more games out of him and he's made a little bit more money. Murphy Reid, I'd say, just looking over his stats at the moment now, his break-even's now in the 60s. So I guess he's one that you could probably get rid of, I'd say, based on 308K.
Yeah, I'd be getting rid of Murphy Reid now, by the way.
Yeah, he's one.
Butt in.
Yeah, no, he's probably one that I'd just actually put in that top 3 trade targets or in that top options there, especially if you have him, just because he has a pretty hard role as an impact forward for Freo. He's definitely a very good player at doing that, and that's probably reflected in his scoring. But I'd say, look, he's one that if you have him, get rid of him, get him up to a premium, get a rookie, get the money out of him as soon as you can, because I think he's one that's going to be starting to drop pretty quickly. Having said that, he does play St Kilda next week, so who actually knows what will happen is with his scoring. He could actually score quite nicely, but I guess Murphy Reid's one that you could get rid of and get good money out of. But moving on to our trade in options. There we go. There's not too many on the horizon there for rookies. I think it was a tough week last week already with Matt Carroll as being really the only standout trade out option. Whereas this week we've got probably even slimmer pickings. Henry Hustwaite down the bottom there. He's got a negative break even, but has only played 1 game. So we'll have a discussion about that in a minute. But Oscar McDonald, he's pretty much the only one there that screams a decent rookie, or not, I wouldn't say even decent rookie, but an option if you're looking for a downgrade option to facilitate an upgrade elsewhere. What are your thoughts, Nathan? Priced at 119.9k, listed defender, but plays as a forward for Freo. Got a negative break even of 64. That's partially due to his solid score of 85. Scored a 50 the week before, so not the absolute worst. But what are your thoughts on Oscar McDonald there? Is he worth a trade in at all, or is he one of those rookies that you look at the likes of, say, Clay Hall, Tom Gross from West Coast, who we all thought were the next big thing? Is this even more of a red flag, playing a more of a key position player at Freo, has been injury prone in the past, or do we give him a bit of a second chance with, or maybe not even a second chance, but a chance in our sides because we're so short we have such a lack of rookies?
Well, I've actually brought him in this week.
Have you?
I'm just trying to see who I've actually brought him in for. I'm not sure who I brought him in for Finn O'Sullivan, who I think had to go. So yeah, I feel like if you're in my position and you've basically got a rookie that's maxed out and he's probably not going to make any more money, like me with Finn O'Sullivan, then it's probably worth having a look. His two scores, he scored a 50 against Melbourne and then 85 against Adelaide. He's playing St Kilda this week. As long as he doesn't cop the Carl Wilkie matchup, which I don't think he will, given that he's basically the third forward, I can see him scoring quite well this week. Negative 64 break even, so he's projected to go up 52,800. Yeah, I feel like he's probably going to be the way that most people will go down. Which I think is probably a smart option, given that I don't think there's really anyone else. I can see Huswaite's on there, but he's only played one game. I don't think there's really anyone else on my list who I would probably want to really bring in this week. Yeah, the only other ones here, so Sandy Brock, Darcy Fort, James Tunstall, I don't think can come in after his sub-affected game. So, yeah, I feel like it's basically going to be Oscar McDonald or basically no one this week. So, I think he's probably the best option of a poor bunch of rookies this week. In saying that, though, sometimes these rookies who don't appear that great on paper end up being some of the better rookies. So I've brought him in. I don't have any hesitation bringing him in because I don't think he's going to cop the subfest. So I'm happy to take the risk on him and hope he can keep sort of performing. I don't think I'd be expecting 85 every week, but, if he can sort of maintain a 50 or 60 score each week, I think he'll make a good amount of money. So, yeah, I've brought him in, but, if you can, I'd probably avoid going down just because I don't know long-term how sustainable he's going to be.
Yeah, he's one that's not exactly... he's close to basement price, so I guess you're not risking overly too much. It's whether I think he can stay fit in the park and not get injured. And that kind of key position player or playing up forward is a bit of a risk playing as a tall forward. So it's one of those ones where, look, I think if you need the money to facilitate an upgrade, great. I think go for it. Especially if you can get a maxed out rookie. I wouldn't be tossing up, a rookie that's got more money to make and then just getting that enough money to facilitate a upgrade. Anywhere you can get, but I guess it's one, as Nath said, if you need a rookie this week, Oscar McDonald's probably it. And we also, especially how badly St Kilda went against the Dogs, I'm not saying from a St Kilda perspective they're going to replicate that against Freo, but if they do, then 90% of that Freo side are going to score pretty healthily. So he's already scored that 85, so he's got that in his cycle. I guess the risk is if he does score a couple more games poorly, that 85 quickly gets out of his cycle and this cash generation is stunted pretty quickly. But I think if you've got healthy cash gen, he's one that I wouldn't be too fussed in bringing in. He's also one that you could potentially bring in just as not a correctional trade, but getting a dead rookie off field, and maybe banking a little bit of money just to get another healthy rookie on field for the time being. So he's one that I guess he's probably the strongest candidate at the moment for bringing in a rookie. But moving onwards, before we talk on Huswaite, and we talked probably about Bontempelli at length a little bit, but Chad Warner's another one. Break even of 79. He's priced at 461k, so quite cheap for Warner standards in general, let alone, even as a midfielder, but let alone as a forward. Previous 3 scores, his 121 came in an impressive outing against the Suns, even though they got belted in the end. But 71 and 81 in his previous 2 before that probably doesn't scream as much as pick-me as most would suggest. He does have that eligibility up forward. What are your thoughts on that, Nathan? We all know Warner's capability of scoring 130s, 140s in that midfield. He's got a tag threat on him with him being quite a dangerous or mid forward, but essentially a centre stoppage mid who bursts forward and kick goals. What are your thoughts on Chad Warner? Is he one that you're thinking about bringing into your team, or is he one that, Petrarca maybe at 30k more or 30, 40k more is more enticing offer, with him being probably a little bit more of a consistent scorer than Warner is probably not shown the consistency or the heights as what we've expected from him?
Yeah, I've probably got Petrarca in that same spot that I would probably have Warner. So he's probably a pass for me. He sort of had a bit of a role change this year as well. He doesn't seem to be playing as much midfield minutes. He sort of seems to be playing more half forward, which explains the sort of yo-yo scores that he's having. So if you have to pick him, though, I would only pick him as a forward. There's no way on earth you're bringing him into your midfield when you've got much better options. But as a forward, look, I'm not going down that path because I think Petrarca at 36k more is probably better option. And if you somehow haven't got Caleb Daniel in your side, I know he's gone up 100 and nearly 200k, but I would even say he's a better option than Chad Warner, around the same price. So yeah, I don't think Chad's going to be coming into my side, just because I think there's better options in both lines for him, and I can't see him being top sort of 8 to 10 in the forward line, and he's definitely not a top 15 in the midfield either. So yeah, I think there's better options, in my opinion, than Chad Warner this year. But as I said, if you are going to go down the path, it's only in the forward line.
Yeah, I think he definitely early in the season. I think he definitely wasn't playing more in the midfield. But I just looked at his heat map here against the Suns, and he predominantly played around that centre stoppage, around that midfield area. Sorry, so yeah, he's one that I guess you could watch a little bit carefully and see whether you want him. I think there's potentially some risk that he falls out of that top 6 forward possibility with your Rankins, your Horn Francises, your Petrarcas, whatnot. I think he's probably just a step below them at the moment. But I guess if you're looking for someone cheap, I wouldn't knock it at all if you can bring him in just simply with a 1 up, 1 down movement. I wouldn't boost him, I don't think, to get him in. Just because I feel there's probably other options out there that are slightly better than Warner to bring in using 3 trades. Like, I wouldn't burst the bank to get him in, but I think if you can get him in, facilitate maybe say a Christian Moraes and I don't know, a Davidson or whatever, one rookie that's kind of not great and another rookie that's kind of close to maxing out. You get Warner pretty cheap. You're only spending about 140, 150k to get him. On top of that maxed out rookie, I think he's not a bad option. And I think, if the Swans can turn some form around pretty quickly, I think Warner's going to be a key player in that rejuvenated Sydney midfield and forward line. I think he's one that can really spark them. Having said that, he's a bit of a tag threat in general. But But if he can get off the chain a little bit, he's very capable of scoring, 120 pluses, 130 pluses, with the 20 disposal game and a couple goals here and there. So he's one that I'd watch a little bit carefully, but I wouldn't be breaking the bank to get him in, that's for sure. But finally, before we move on to our vice captaincy and captaincy option, Henry Hustwaite, we'll keep this one a little bit briefer because I reckon we'll talk about him more next week if he does get a game. Look, I guess if you're desperate for trading options for rookies, do you reckon it's worth going Hustwaite early? Like, he scored 72, which is respectable against the Eagles. And he does play the Tigers this week, which you could expect another half-decent score. He's obviously benefited from coming in under probably Will Day's exit for the next 3 to 4 months. What are your thoughts on Hustwaite? Do you reckon it's worth at all to go early, or we go back to that kind of age-old scenario where you bring in a rookie early, all of a sudden they have a terrible game or they get injured, they get dropped before they even have had a price rise? What's your thoughts on Hustwaite?
Yeah, I'm going to back that second sentiment. You can't bring him in yet. I know he looked good, but there's a famous player about 10 years ago now. He scored 100 in his first game. Everyone jumped on him after that first game, and then he got subbed out on 6 and didn't play again for the rest of the year. And everyone who made that trade got burnt. So, yes, I know he looked good, but you just have to hang on to him for another week. Crashed. Hang on.
Are we back?
Have you got me?
Yeah, I think my internet bugged
Yeah.
out again.
No, that's all good. So hard no for me. The other guy I'm going to throw on here, the guy I'm trying to get in this week is Lockie Neal.
Yeah.
Who is priced at 562,000 with a break even of 79. So he's sort of a bit in the Nick Dacos category where I think he can go up. So yeah, I'm trying to get Lockie Neal in this week. I was hoping I could get rid of Nevitt for him, but I just can't. I just don't quite have enough. So I'm gonna have to figure something else out to get him in. But yeah, he I think should be on midfield target this week.
We got you back, Nathan.
Yeah, so I don't know what happened there.
Well,
Yeah, so I'll just yeah, so I'm trying to get Lockie Neal in. I'm trying to get Lockie Neal in this week, just given that break even and the fact that I still think he's capable of being a top 10, top 15 midfielder, which for me is good enough. So yeah, I think Lockie has to come in this week for mine.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll try and wrap this up semi quickly whilst both internets don't crash the better game. But yeah, I guess the honourable mention there, we got Marcus Bontempelli. We've talked about him at length a little bit, so we'll leave that one there. I think if you have the money and you can facilitate an upgrade there, probably wouldn't be the worst idea to bring him in. We all know what he's capable of, and I don't think if you have the money available and it doesn't really stuff your structure around too much, and it's just a simple upgrade to bring another premium midfielder in, and doesn't limit your cash generation elsewhere, I think he's one that I think you'd be pretty happy with bringing in. But before we finish off with Nath stats that matter, the top kind of VC or top 3 VC and C options for round 8, I've got. Nathan, you can add any more if you can think of that are worthy of chucking the VC and C on there as well. But Andy Brayshaw, I think if you can avoid a Windhager tag, which could be likely with how well Brayshaw is gone, but I could see Windhager trying to nullify Sarong as well. Obviously plays St Kilda at Friday night at 7:40. Could be a good VC option there and get the VC sorted nice and early. I could see him doing quite nicely regardless, whether it's a safe 120 or a 130. I think he's one that you could always bank on being pretty safe regardless. Maxi Gawn, I think, is the obvious one. Interestingly enough, he hasn't scored too well against West Coast in both his outings last season. Will probably come up against Matt Flynn there. So it'd be interesting to see how he goes, or whether West Coast decide to bring in Bailey Williams to kind of double team Gawn. I think they did a lot of work last season to nullify Gawn's influence around the ground, especially those bombs down the line where Gawn basically sits back, intercept marks, rebounds the other way. That's what Richmond really didn't do that well on Thursday night. Last round, I think that was kind of the reason why Gawn scored so nicely, was because Nank was just bombing it down there and making it really hard for any kind of Richmond forwards to get going, and Gawn would just intercept it and send it the other way. So I think that contributed quite nicely to his scoring. But it'd be interesting to see how he goes against the Eagles. Look, I would pencil him in regardless. I think he's going to dominate regardless who they bring in. West Coast, I just don't think they've been struggling even more so than they have last year with regards to getting stuff on the, decent performances on track. And Melbourne bouncing back against the Tigers in the week before that as well. I could see Gawn doing a really, put a dent in West Coast season again and really prove why he's still one of the premium ruckmen going around. Tristan Sherry's another one. Thursday night against Essendon. Obviously, you probably wouldn't, captain him playing Thursday. He's probably VC material, but I reckon he's a decent VC option as well. They don't have Draper, they don't have Nick Bryan, but they do have, what's his name? Todd Goldstein, who I don't think he nullified. Yeah. Hasn't nullified, didn't nullify Darcy Cameron, your mob, on Anzac Day too well. I think Darcy Cameron scored about 130 on him. But Goldstein in his prime was very, very competitive ruckman and one of the premier ruckmans of the comp, and had a very good knack of restricting opposition ruckmen. I don't know how this will impact Sherry compared to, say, Darcy Cameron. He's a bit more around the ground, whereas Sherry relies on like those hit-outs to advantage and whatnot. But I could see Sherry doing quite nicely against Goldstein. Whether or not he scores another 150 is yet to be seen. He scored that 96 last year. I'm not exactly sure whether that was against Draper or not, but he's one that I would be pretty confident on putting a VC as well. What are your thoughts on any other options there, Nathan?
Yeah, I'm going Tristan Cherry. Darcy Cameron scored 125 in pouring rain, and I think Tristan Cherry's a better ruckman than Darcy Cameron. So, I think the fact Tristan plays on the Thursday night as well, just lock him in. I can't see him not scoring over 100, which is probably good enough for me as a captain, unless he gets injured. So, I think if you can try and loophole the Thursday night, if you can try and loophole that Thursday night option, that's probably the best way of doing it. And then beyond that, I don't mind if you somehow haven't got Tristan Cherry. I don't mind Brayshaw against St Kilda. The only thing I'm a little bit worried about is whether or not Windhager goes to him. But I feel like Sarong's the one you've got to tag at 3-0. So I think that will let Brayshaw off the leash. And Max Gawn, well, yeah, I think Max has proven once again that he is, back to his sort of best. I know he tailed up Toby Nankervis on Anzac Eve. So, I think all three of them are viable options. So the way I've gone Nick Dacos as my captain, as my fallback if Tristan Cherry doesn't score well. I think he's close to being untaggable now. I know definitely whatever Essendon did in that first quarter didn't work, because I think he should have had 3 goals a quarter time. Yeah, I think Nick Dacos has to be the fullback option. If you decide to go with Cherry or Brayshaw and they don't quite score as well as what you're hoping for.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in my side, I don't think there's really anyone else who I would say is a viable option, other than Nick as being a captain. So yeah, for mine, it's Tristan Cherry and then Nick Dacos as a captain.
Yeah, I would be, pretty happy with that one. I think for me, it's probably could well be Sherry into Brayshaw and get it overdone by Friday night, regardless of how it goes. I guess another option there, if you've got Butters against the Dogs don't really probably tag too much, whereas Bont could cop a little bit more of attention. As you said, Dacos is a pretty solid option. The other probably candidates that you could go is a Petrarca if you don't own Gorn. Could do a number on West Coast. I could see him being one of those players that could just feast against the Eagles. And another one as well, Neil on a Sunday night, maybe pushing it a little bit too late with captaincy options. Don't know how confident I would feel in playing in a league matchup or going for overall, and all of a sudden you're left with Neil with how his season's gone a little bit pear-shaped this season against the Tough Suns outfit, but he's one that I could see doing quite well in a Fury Q clash, or even Jai Newcombe against the Tigers, who don't put too much pressure into midfield opposition. I could see the Hawks, especially at the G, could do quite nicely there. But before we wrap it up, we've got Nath's favourite segment here where he's toiled all week to find some stats that matter. What are your thoughts on a pretty, important Q clash coming up for both sides before Nathan's thing crashes again? And obviously the Blues versus the Crows. I'm just waiting until Nathan gets back again. I don't know if his internet's there. You got you, Nathan?
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening there. But yeah, what are your stats that matter, especially with the Q clash on Sunday night and the Crows and Carlton game? I think you got some stats on there.
Yeah, well, I just want to quickly go back over Anzac Day. So we touched on this last week. So Essendon had to win. Essendon had to win the stoppage game, and they weren't able to. They lost the stoppage game by 13 points, which doesn't seem too bad. But then they lost the turnover game by. They lost the turnover game by 23 points. So realistically, that was the only hope for Essendon to win that game, is to win the stoppage game, and they weren't able to. So that was sort of why they didn't do as well. Now, I thought I would track a different trend this year. So I'm going to do this from a SuperCoach approach just real quick before I focus on my game stat for the week. So I thought I'd have a look at the top players in each position right now, just to sort of give listeners out there a bit of a guide. So right now, the number one scoring defender is Lockie Whitfield. So I know Thomas, I think, has got Lockie Whitfield in his side. So that's
Yeah,
a massive. That's a massive gain if you've got Lockie Whitfield in there. And then his teammate Lockie Ash comes in at number 2. And then the Saints boys, Sinclair and Wanganeen Malera come in at 3 and 4. And then Zorko at 5 and Jordan Clark at 6, who might surprise a few people there. But yeah. And then just quickly, I'll go outside this. And number 7's Harry Sheasel. His damage isn't as good as what it has been in previous years, which is why he's fallen down a little bit. Carl Amon at 8. I hope you kept Matt Roberts because he's number 9. And then Jake Bowie's at number 10. So they're sort of the top defenders here. And I guess this Matt Roberts is a case in thing as well with the Joel Frazier rule, that just because someone's not scoring well doesn't necessarily mean you get rid of them, because they can always bounce back, and especially with guys like that. So top midfielders. So this is just pure midfielders. So I'm not counting DPP options in here because I'll put them in their other positions. So Andrew Brayshaw's number 1. And then bit of a surprise, George Hewitt's number 2. I think he snuck under the radar. He did this a few years ago when he first moved to Carlton, where he shot the lights out. I think he was a defender. Absolutely shot the lights out. I think he ended up being a top 6 defender for the year, which I think he was sort of priced about where he was this year. So if you manage to start with him, that's a massive win.
I was just going to say, Nathan, just sorry to butt in there, Nathan, but he pretty much, Hewitt's definitely been the one that's underrated. He hasn't dropped under a ton since round 1, and it hasn't dropped under 120 since the most recent matchup where he scored 103 against the Cats. So in a tough midfield battle there. So he's one that I guess everyone looked at Cher and Oliver and who else, like even Will Ashcroft as mid-price option. Callahan as well, yeah, exactly right. So Hewitt's probably the one that's been the most impressive. He's probably the one that was priced the most expensive, just at sub 500, but just under sub 500, sorry, at 496k. But to score average 124 or just under 125 for this season has definitely been impressive.
Yeah, he was the one I think we all missed. And then Tom Liberatore at 3. Hugh McCluggage at number 4, probably a bit of a surprise. Nick Dacos is 5th. Jack Sinclair 6th, but as I said, he's DPP. Josh Dunkley's number 6. So Brisbane have 2 in the top 5. And then Caleb Sarong is at... So Brisbane have got 2 in the top 6, sorry. Caleb Sarong at 7. And then Connor Rosie at 8. I think a lot of people might have had a bit of question marks about Connor Rosie after his first few games, but absolutely since he's moved to halfback, he is absolutely lit it up, averaging 119 across his last 3 games. So he's another one who perhaps people slept on. And then just outside that group, so Steel side bottoms at number 9, the Collingwood Fossil, John Newcomb at number 10, and then Walsh and Chera at 11 and 12. Richards at 13, Lockie Neal at 14, and Isaac Heaney at 15. So they're sort of the top midfielders there. Just quickly, top rucks, I'm sure no surprise, but Gawn's number 1, DeConning number 2, and Tristan Cherry at number 3. And then Lloyd Meeks at 4, Darcy Cameron's at 5. So those bottom 2 are just continuing on where they left off from last year. And then the forwards, so Jack McRae, so your boy Jack McRae, Thomas, number 1 ranked forward for the year. Isaac Rankin at number 2, he has come down a little bit. So even though he hasn't come down as much as I thought he has, I do feel vindicated still for not picking him. Jason Horne-Francis at number 3, Matt Kennedy at number 4, which is a new addition. Caleb Daniel at 5 and Christian Petrarca at 6. So the fact that I started with Petrarca and he's now a top 6 forward, I think has been a massive win for me. And then just outside that group, so Bailey Smith at 7, although he is actually the highest averaging forward. And if we go off averages, he's actually number 1. Paul Curtis at 8. That's going to be a big loss for North Melbourne over the next few weeks. Josh Tracy at 9, and then Chad Warner at 10. So we spoke about Chad Warner, but he's at 10. And then just one more, Toby Green's at 12, and Patrick Dangerfield's at 16. So there's just a few names to perhaps keep your eyes on. And then just really quickly, I just really want to quickly touch on this Q Clash game. So I think this is the biggest Q Clash game that has ever been held since the Gold Coast Suns came in. And if they manage to win this, I think this could be their biggest moment since Gary Ablett Jr. joined the club all those years ago, because the way they are playing right now, so I think Collingwood and the Gold Coast Suns are the 2 best sides in the league right now. I know some people would argue that the Suns have had an easy draw, and that's rightly so. But the stats and the way that they're playing can't be dismissed just easily. They're the number one team in the turnover game, which, as we've touched on, I think only about one of the last 20 premiers or something ridiculous has not been top 3 in the turnover game. So they're number 1 in that game. And both of these teams, so this is where I think this battle's going to be won. So they're 1-2 in the clearance game. So that like the clearance differentials for the year, they're 1 and 2. So I don't think it's going to be astray to say that the winner of that clearance battle is probably going to end up being the winner of this game, given the fact that, you know, they're both quite potent at turnover. Gold Coast are number 2. Brisbane 3, 4, 5, 6. Brisbane are number 8, which is a little bit down on where they were last year. But the biggest difference actually is conceding from turnover. So Gold Coast are 5th, and Brisbane are also 8th. So I think there's a lot of improvement for Brisbane. I haven't given up faith on Brisbane yet. So I think Brisbane will want to make a statement and show that they're not out of the premiership race by any means and stretch. And I'm sure they would like nothing more than to beat the Gold Coast Suns, who are absolutely flying at the minute. So, I think this is the biggest moment for the Suns since Gary Ablett Jr. signed. That if they can win this game, the Gold Coast Suns, I think they are well on their way to playing in their first final series and perhaps even doing some damage in the final series. So it's come on really quickly for them. And just one final one. I just want to quickly touch on the Adelaide-Carlton game. So Carlton don't have a great record historically at Adelaide Oval. They have won their last 3 games at Adelaide Oval, but 2 of those have been in Gather Round where they haven't actually played an Adelaide-based team. And then their only win now against an Adelaide side was against Port Adelaide. And they basically had to kick like 6 goals from stoppage in the last quarter to win that game. So far from convincing there, and Adelaide have belted Carlton there the last few times. So I will be leaning towards Adelaide in that game, even though a lot of the stats actually say you probably should be tipping Carlton. But yeah, I just feel like the home advantage for Adelaide this week, I think will be pivotal, and I think they might be a bit dirty after their perhaps down showing against Freo in the Lynn Hall tribute game. So, they're just some sort of stats just to keep you on. I know it's dragged on for probably 10 minutes. But yeah, obviously, as you guys can tell, I do like my stats. And I like giving you some sort of out there ones. So yeah, I think Adelaide this week will be a good tip. And the tip for me in the Q Clash, I am actually going to tip the Gold Coast Suns. I think this is their moment. I think they're going to take it. I think they're going to show Brisbane who's king in Queensland. And they will be well on their way to their first finals display in September.
Yeah, nice one. I think there's some important information out there if you're looking to potentially bring in some players that you think could be, top 6 to 10 in your SuperCoach sides, and obviously some important information there for you tipsters out there as we finish off this episode. So hopefully you've stuck with us for the long run. I know apologies for the internet cutouts and stuff like that. It's been a bit of an average setup we've got at the moment with some of these internet cutouts, which has been a little bit frustrating tonight, but hopefully that won't persist moving forward. But hopefully you get
I live up in the hills and the internet gets a bit dodgy when it rains. So sorry about that, everyone.
Yeah, the weather's definitely hasn't helped at all. But that's all we got time for today, and hopefully you get your trade sorted for this week before the Thursday night game. Obviously, be wary of potential VC and C options being quite early in the round, perhaps compared to some late options. So make sure you've got your adequate loops sorted there to make your VC and C worthwhile. But other than that, we'll come back after the completion of round 8.